Okay, welcome to the 71st episode of an Evolving Man podcast. Today I'm very excited to be speaking to Mervin Canham. Mervin is an addiction specialist and co-leader at the Mankind Project, or MKP. The MKP is an organization aimed at changing the world one man at a time, allowing men to touch a piece of their shadow by being vulnerable with other men. Mervin is also a co-founder of the Holding Space projects. So welcome, Mervin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I love to share a little bit of how I meet people, if I've met the people. And we met last about 6 months ago down in Devon,
Yeah.
on a Mankind Project weekend, and I was very drawn to your lovely energy. I was like, oh, I'd love to speak to you. So thank you for agreeing to speak. So how I love to begin the podcast is for you to share a little bit about your own journey. How did you get into the work you now do, Mervin?
So it's funny that how you and I met kind of went full circle, right? My sponsor at the time, who owned a rehab at the time, asked me an interesting question. He said, "What are you good at?" I was probably like 6 months sober at the time. 6 months, yeah. And I was like, "Well, I'm good at being with addicts, you know. I'm good at being in rehab." And he then gave me the opportunity to um, work at his rehab. Um, and that's how I got started in the addictions work. But the requirement was that I needed to be a year sober in order to work in the facility. Um, and then that's how, the journey started. But what was interesting was I last year I became a co-leader in the organization of MKP. And I came into MKP in 2006. And um, what was full circle for me was being with the man who brought me in to the rehab space, working in his rehab. And he also his introduction to introducing me to MKP. And then him also being on the leader path and being a co-leader. I then got to do my first international co-lead with him in where I met you in Devon, in Ambercombe. Um, so yeah, that was very special for me of how full circle the whole thing worked, and yeah, just how I guess favored I felt, and how loved and supported by the universe and by this work and by the men in this work, particularly men like you, um, who live their mission, you know. And I guess that's how I kind of want live my life, is live my life in mission, and live my life purposefully around and I think it was, even with the Holding Space project, it was more about like, okay, so because MKP is very hidden, how do we bring MKP to the forefront? I'm not MKP to the forefront, but bring this work to the open. And also, my introduction of sitting in circles, I've been sitting in circles for years, and I've kind of had this idea all along of how I wanna be in a place where I create spaces for men, but it's also like, how do I find these men? Um, and then what happened was I approached an artist, and his work, his name's Justice Mukele, and um, his work spoke about toxic masculinity. And for me, it was about, okay, so how do I then, work with him? And me and him had a meeting, and it turns out we had a good rapport. And the first night we started in September last year, we had 50 men come.
50, wow.
Yeah. So, and from that, a lot of other men have come, from that and stayed. And I had the privilege of also a few men from that space then went to go do an MKP weekend. Um, and they currently doing their primary integration group, their PIT.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just building, we're just building. So it's kind of, I sit back and I just feel proud and so grateful and blessed to do this work and yeah, and just grow this work and take this work where it needs to go. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, it does. Yeah, thank you, Mervin. And love you to share a little bit more. What for you is this work?
So look, I mean, I think a lot of my work comes from pain, from my own trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And, growing up in an abusive home, alcoholic dad, mom and dad would drink in the house. So then the home environment became very unstable. And yeah, I guess scary, and me feeling misunderstood as a young man suffering from dyslexia, not being able to fit into school, not understanding school, um, and also part of that wounding is not feeling good enough, right? And it's almost like the other kids are getting it, I'm not. What's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
So part of that is what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Right? And then finding the solution to that, and going through like stuff like sexual traumas, abuse, and then finding an outlet, and the drugs became the solution. The drugs became the solution. It became I guess the where I almost like where I could breathe and just have some relief from being with me, because the challenge was being with me,
Mm-hmm.
and escaping me and escaping my reality. Um, so a lot of the work then, so even where I grew up, I mean, I grew up in a colored township, and in that space, I suppose also if you in South Africa, there's always like these levels or these classism uh, 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 things around. Because I grew up in an Afrikaans neighborhood, and I spoke English, so it's almost like when you spoke English, you're better than. I'm better than you guys. I'm a cheese boy, or I mean, that's what I'd be called. Um, and again, it's othering, me being othered, um, and not fitting in. And I guess when I found this work, I found love, I found acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about this work, I talk about MKP, a brotherhood. I mean, even as far as like going back to like A8, like 12-step meetings as well, I found that stuff there as well. I found love there. I found acceptance there. I felt I found my tribe, where I belong, and that was important to me. Um, you know, um, and just feeling a part of, you know, and quieting down that voice that says there's something wrong with me. You know, yeah, and I tried getting clean for a long time. Didn't happen. Um, 7 rehabs later. Um, but I guess I didn't surrender, right? I didn't surrender to, I guess I just didn't want to get clean. I was avoiding it. I didn't want to, because obviously I love the drugs. The drugs gave me relief, and yeah, the work um, comes from pain. You know, a lot of the work comes from pain and turning that pain into power, and that becoming my power. You know, so lots and lots of gratitude for this work, and then I get the privilege to travel and, you know, come do the stuff in London where I met you. So how magical is that? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. What a challenging but beautiful journey. Really appreciate you, Mervin.
Mm, mm, mm.
Sounds like you've had 7 rehabs. Sounds like it was a difficult journey.
For sure. It has been a difficult journey.
When you were talking on one of your other podcasts, I was listening to, you mentioned you'd done 7 rehabs, and then you mentioned what the big shift was that finally helped you to give up. Would you like to share a bit about that? What was the shift? So you had 7 rehabs. What was the big shift which helped you to let go of your addictions?
Well, I think it boils down to um, it kind of boils down to me completely surrendering to to that to the program, the 12-step program. Because clearly the way I was running my life wasn't working. The proof is in the pudding. You know, I couldn't get clean. I couldn't, and yeah, I just had to get to a place of just surrendering and knowing that, you know, that I can't run my life successfully, and my life is going to shit, and that I needed help, like a different way, you know. Also, I lost my brother through suicide. You know, he committed suicide.
Sorry to hear.
And thank you, thank you. And what was interesting was, like, even when, you know, when he passed on, I then started selling his stuff for drugs. I started selling his clothing for drugs. You know, and the reason I'm telling that specific story is because I need to be reminded of that story. Is That's the desperation. You know, that's the desperation. How desperate I was to get high. That I'd do anything to get high. You know, and then for me that was a rock bottom. I mean, I got kicked out of the house as well. My mom kicked me out of the house, and, you know, she had enough of my bullshit. She just had enough. You know, she tried everything. I mean, I remember one day her being at the police station with me because I stole something at home, and she was like crying at the police station, like, you know, I tried. She's explaining to the officer, like, I tried everything for this guy, but he just, you know, he just doesn't want to get clean. And I remember feeling bad about that. You know, I felt really bad. But then I still went and got high, right? After. Um, so yeah, I think, you know, for me it was either suicide or I get clean. And I tried suicide. I mean, you know, I tried killing myself. I wasn't successful at that. So I you know, I kind of went to, like, what do I do now? And I mean, my motto since I got clean was, you know, and I forgot this, was I deserve a better life. You know, I deserve a better life. And that's what I told myself throughout all these years, is I didn't clean up to have a shit life. I cleaned up because I wanted a better life. And I made that choice. And I did whatever it, you know, and for me, it was like, you know, I need to do whatever it takes to get clean, you know. And I immersed myself into the work, into the 12-step stuff, following the 12 steps. being honest. You know, in recovery, they talk about honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. How? Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, and that's what I needed to apply in my life is just, be honest. Stop the because the bullshit and I just got tired of that. I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And yeah, it was almost like I don't have not what do I have to lose to do this, and I'd go to the meetings. I still go to the meetings. I went to a meeting on Monday, 12-step meetings. So I still do that stuff, because I need to. Because the thing is also sometimes they talk about us as addicts, we suffer from the disease of forgetfulness. Forget how painful it was. And I need to remind myself from where I come from. So even having this conversation with you kind of reminds me, and you're asking me these questions is very helpful because a lot of the stuff, I think throughout the years I forgot, and these mottos and these principles that I lived by, and how I kind of went on. I guess we're all just living life. We're all just doing our best, right? But it's nice to be reminded from where I come from. I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, I'm interviewing you, remember? I was sharing I was interviewed a few days ago on another podcast, and I said this is very much out of my comfort zone because I don't like talking. That's why I like interviewing people because I don't have to say anything. So yeah, I can really resonate with your story or reminding yourself, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate. I have quite a lot of scars on my arms from self-harming and suicide attempts, and that does remind me to keep my heart open to realize, yeah, I can resonate with your story that, yeah, to keep that connection. Sometimes I can dissociate. That's part of my thing with trauma. My survival of trauma was to dissociate. So sometimes just to look at my arms and my scars to go and cry and just feel shit what you've been through. So I really feel that as well, Mervin. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, one thing I'm kind of interested in exploring is maybe you mentioned trauma, you mentioned addiction. Can you see now that you've worked in men's circles, can you see any link between trauma and addictions now in your own life or in the 12-step work?
Oh, completely. Yeah.
What do you feel that link is?
Well, I mean, the link was to disassociate or numb experience, or numb my feelings, numb how I felt about certain things as a little boy, and when I found the drugs, the drugs became the relief for that, because the reality is I didn't want to be me. I always looked at other kids and I wanted to be like them. And I was never comfortable in my skin. I was never comfortable in my body. It's interesting. I hated how I sounded. It's like someone said. I heard this really interesting thing where, with in regards to these podcasts and doing these kind of things and being interviewed, that I'm at a place now where I'm comfortable with listening to my own voice. I think before, I'd cringe. I'm like, oh gosh, I sound terrible. And, being terrible with myself and beating myself up. But I'm getting to a place where I'm like really okay with the sound of my voice. So that means that's growth for me, right? That's really growth for me. And it boils down to like just self-acceptance and the self-love stuff. Because I think for me, it was always like this external kind of thing, right? Whether it be, whether it be relationships, whether it be whatever, just to fill that void, that emptiness in me, and whether it be pornography, whether it be shopping, yeah, it's still those challenges of looking outside of myself, So I guess, I mean, I think really the work doesn't stop. That's been the lesson for me, and I still go to the I groups. I still
What are the
um,
I groups, Mervin? Just so
well,
people who don't know.
I groups are just basically support groups for men who've done the MKP weekend. That they sit in a group with men who've done the weekend, and also they've got facilitation skills on how to run those spaces. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for those spaces. Um, for men who love me to put my feet to the fire. Yeah. So I'm completely grateful for that. Yeah. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but there's definitely a link. I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I see that in my work with men is that there's a lot of people I work with have addictions, and we don't always link it back into the trauma, the childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And obviously, I've seen that a lot in the MKP work, the Mankind Project work, is, that link into, well, what happened to me as a child?
Mm, mm, mm.
You know,
And also, how do I reparent myself?
yeah.
So, and that's the beauty of this is that me as a 40-year-old man, I can kind of go back to the little boy, the 5-year-old, the 6-year-old little boy, who went through all these traumatic events, and the messages that I took on, the school stuff again, the I'm not good enough, and kind of then carrying those messages into my adult life,
Mm,
and not feeling good enough, and actually, and visualizing, sitting with the little boy in my lap,
yeah.
and what do I tell him? What's the message I tell him? What does he need to hear? And he probably needs to hear that he's safe, and that he's seen, and there's nothing wrong with him, and that I love him,
Mm.
and he's perfect the way he is, and he's beautiful, and he's seen. Um,
How is your little boy now from having that work, from where he was?
wow, I mean,
You don't have to answer that, but
no, no, no. I mean, I was just thinking about it, and I giggled, because sometimes the little boy kind of throws his toys out the cot, right? And
yeah,
like,
yeah, mine too.
I don't feel loved. No one cares about me,
Yeah.
you know. And I respond from that place as an adult, right?
Mm. Mm.
And I don't feel loved, and I don't feel cared for. I don't feel seen, and everybody's out to get me. Um, but when I kind of move through that, um, I think what's gotten better is more that the identification of that, you know, and being aware of self, and then when that comes up, to actually just pause and kind of go, what's going on here? Who's showing up? And who's running the show? Is it the little boy running the show? And also, like, what does the little boy need?
Mm.
That's the question, right? He needs to be seen. He needs to be loved. Um, and once I can identify that, so it's gotten better. I think for it's like sometimes it will come up in relationships where that unmet need, you know,
Mm.
or someone's not living according to my expectations, and then I'll get triggered,
Mm.
or you should behave like this, and wanting to control, a partner, or you know, um, and then feeling let down, but then going to that place and then dropping immediately to the little boy
Mm.
who felt abandoned, who felt misunderstood, who felt not seen. And then almost like wanting to inflict pain as well, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm in pain, I want to inflict pain
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
others, you know.
Mm.
So it's a tricky dance.
Yeah. What have you found has really helped? Because I have struggled with this and I hear this a lot, is about control, that we want to control.
Yeah.
How have you started to let go of that control, Mervin?
Well, I think with the program, it's like, I mean, even with the like serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I can't change other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
I can change my behavior. I can change my outlook on the way I see life. Um, and I'm responsible for me, right? I
Mm-hmm.
can't, I can't make you behave the way I want you to behave. Um,
Your audio's just gone a little lower, Mervin.
and now, can you hear me?
Yeah, better. Thank you.
So, so, so yeah, that, that stuff. Um, mm, I went a bit blank when you.
That's all right. Sorry to interrupt. No, that helpful. It's just, yeah, about control. I can really resonate. See that in my relationship. I think on was it last night? No, it was Wednesday night. I had a bit of a trigger with my wife, and I think I see I can be a perfectionist, and therefore I don't want any conflict. But then when I go into my little boy, the boy he makes conflict. So it's like this spiral. So I can see that within myself, and I learn to catch myself a lot quicker. And what's been helpful with my wife is to see that it's okay to make mistakes, because this control that I had, my father was an alcoholic as well. And part of my decision to go to boarding school was to get away from him, because I would fight with him physically a lot. And um, so that control, I took that into my own life. So I found it useful to see that it's okay to make mistakes. And that's one of the big learnings I've been having. So yes, I can really resonate, Mervin.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, but I think it also kind of just boils down to acceptance of, for me, of accepting people for who they are. But also, like, most importantly, accepting myself for who I am with my
Mm.
imperfections. I mean, I always say I'm an imperfect man in an imperfect world, and yeah, I mean, that's what it is for me.
Mm. 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 Thank you, Mervin. So I'd love you to share a little bit about, you mentioned sitting in circles, men's circles, whether it's women's circles. What does that look like? If there's someone who's listening to this going, that's what I need,
Mm.
what does that look like?
So the intention was, um, funny enough, it was yesterday that I felt very, very like a bit defeated with this life thing, and it was a very public figure's birthday yesterday,
Mm.
and he had committed suicide a year ago, I think, last year sometime. Or was it this year? Probably no, it was this year, and I didn't know that was his birthday actually. Um, Only found out like late in the evening, probably like around 12 o'clock in the evening. Um, and why I'm mentioning that story is so this guy committed suicide. Um, and then again, the link between my brother committing suicide. So for me, these men's circles bring up, number one, that I'm not alone. That's why I go to them. Um, because I can get very much in my head about how alone I am, right? How alone I am, and that this work has broken that, where I feel I'm a part of, I'm with my tribe. I'm with men who get me, who understand me. Um, but also just where I can kind of put down the mask, right? Because you know, in this world we wear all these kind of masks, right? And it's just a place for me to show up in my truth and be authentic about my pain and where I'm at, or whatever. And I don't have to sugarcoat shit. I don't have to, you know, tell you this pretty story of how pretty it is, and just a place to be, I guess. So that's what I found in it, and it's just, you know, so many other men relate to the stuff, and we can relate to each other. Um, and it's just beautiful just to speak the truth, um, without ego, without you know, how much money in the bank I got, and all of that stuff. Um, but just a space for me just to, you know, be like 100% honest, man, and vomit. And I think that's the thing. I just vomit, like, let it out, you know, and cry, you know, get relief from that. A week ago, I was um, my daughter. My daughter turned 12. She lives in Durban with her mom, and I haven't spoken. You know, I don't usually talk about her because it's painful. I haven't been in her life for a long time, and you know, I tried phoning her on her birthday. Her mom answered the phone and, you know, said, "Oh, here's Mervin," you know, to her. He passed her the phone, and she was like, "I don't want to talk to him." You know, and I was sore. You know, and I'm just mindful of how sore she must be, you know, as a 12-year-old girl, and the stories that she's making up about me and not being in her life, um, and probably feeling abandoned, you know, by me. Um, and the reason I'm bringing this up is, like, you know, I can take this kind of stuff there. I can take this kind of stuff to that space, and yeah, just be raw, just be honest. Uh, Not from a place of, you know, like, feel sorry for me, no, but from a place of, you know, what can I do to be a part of her life? So there's a lot of work. I mean, the work doesn't stop.
Mm. Thank you. That really touches me. Thank you for sharing. I think I've seen pictures. I don't know if it was on your WhatsApp of a picture of you and your daughter. Or I've seen it somewhere. Maybe it's on Instagram. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I can really feel that. So yeah, I kind of really hear that, the importance of just being vulnerable in these spaces for men, you know, with whatever is present for us. I was doing a men's circle last night, and a lot of my work is with boarders, ex-boarders, and for most of us, we learned to never speak because it was you weren't allowed to speak up in these places because there was so much abuse. You had to keep it down. So to be in a space where we can just share, it's, you know, what's for me really powerful about men's circle is that it's not so much me being able to share, it's hearing other people's stories, like you said, that I'm not alone.
Mm, mm,
For me, it's been, wow, I can share my story, and then I can hear that, wow, someone else is really going through it or has been through it as well. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Marvin. I mean, a lot of men are struggling with suicide, self-harming, or mental health.
Mm.
What do you find is the power of men's work or just sitting in circle for things like that?
Mm. Well, I think number one, relating to each other.
Mhm,
Uh, you know, that kind of breaks the isolation.
mhm, mhm,
Um, but also building community, just being in community is important. Um, I mean, I'm asking myself, what did my like, in an ideal world, what did my brother need um, before he killed himself? So, I mean, there's a lot of stories I can make up about that as well. Um, but I mean, as a gay man, growing up in a space that didn't really accept that it was gay. Um, him sitting in a men's circle. I mean, I sometimes fantasize of what it would be like if he came to MKP and know what he would have found um, love and acceptance,
mhm,
and that there's nothing wrong with him, nothing wrong with being gay, um, and that he's not less of a man, and he's got a different sexual preference, and that's okay. Yeah, and I think
mhm,
just being seen, being held, being hugged.
mhm.
Nothing wrong with a good old hug. I remember hugging you. You gave good hug.
Yeah. Okay. I think I was in tears a few points when we had hugs on the weekend.
And our hearts were touching.
Mm, mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that is special for me because it's also like, how special is this stuff? Because I can, go, I can leave South Africa and go to London and sit in a room that with men who don't look like me
Mm,
and who do look like me, but we're all speaking the same language, and that's the language of the heart, right? And we 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 embrace each other in a beautiful, authentic way. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, the importance of touch and hugs for us as men. I mean, they talk about this idea of skin hunger. I mean, and
Mm.
we're very reserved in Britain, generally. I love going to the MKP. It's like, whenever I see a man, yeah. And yet I also volunteer in an organization quite well known, and we never hug. And it's like, no, come on.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'd get away with it, which is a shame. Um,
Yeah.
so I see that. So it is lovely.
Yeah.
I do love spending time in the Mankind Project, and um, yeah. So I'd love for us to segue a little bit into mission purpose, because I think Rod Boothroyd in his work talks about the king being very much mission and purpose. And in your experience in your own life, but also working with others, how important is the mission and purpose? And if we've not found it, how do we connect?
Mm. Mm. Sure. I mean, I think what the big piece for me is what MKP is really good at is getting there. Like how do we live in mission? How do
Mm,
we live in vision? Like how do we co-create worlds? How do we co-create a world, that we want to live in? the world that we want to see. And for me, my mission is I co-create a world of love, understanding, and acceptance. By being inclusive of everyone and seeing everyone. You know, um, and that keeps me focused. That keeps me, the eye on the prize of why I do what I do, and it reminds me of why I do what I do. And you know, um, when I'm living in mission, there's a fulfillment, there's purpose. Um, I mean, I remember like when I started the holding space and I'd go home at night, I wouldn't be able to sleep because I was like excited about this shit. You know what I mean? It's okay, this shit happened. This is real. You know what I mean? It happened.
Mhm.
It's just like mind blowing shit. It was just so excited. But also like, because I know a lot of people, and it's like a lot of people came to the space, that I know from the streets.
Mm.
Um, and that for me was just beautiful. Really, really beautiful. Yeah, yeah. So um it's like when you apply to staff, they ask you about your mission.
Mhm.
I'm always like excited about that. And the question is, are you living your mission? I love that question because I am.
Mhm. Mhm.
And also, I need to get paid. I need to make the money that I deserve because I love what I do, and
Mhm.
that will come. Like I believe in that. I really, really believe in that. Is building that.
Mhm. Can feel your passion, brother.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You know, I love this shit, man.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because regardless of what kind of man you are, a brown man, a white man, pink, whatever man, I'm always willing to give a hug. I'm always willing to embrace. Because I know what it's like being on the other side. So again, turning my pain into power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I can see that myself turning pain into power. I see that on my own journey, I got stuck in pain, the pain loop of victim. Why me? Why is life so hard? Oh my God. And I got stuck there. I think it was my wife about 10 years ago was like, get over yourself. I'm like, what? What? But it's been really hard. And that's been useful, turning my pain into power. So, yeah, yeah. Thank you, Mervin. So anything else you really feel with mission that would help to, if someone listening to this, to help them connect to their purpose? And I see that how important it is for men and women to have this mission and purpose. Anything you've done or you think would be useful?
I mean, I'd say go sit.
Well, I missed that bit.
I'd probably, oh, sorry, John. What's going on? Where are you?
I'm still here.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
I can't see you.
Has the screen gone dark?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Because someone's trying to phone me.
Ah,
Uh, so yeah, man, I'd probably say go sit in a men's circle.
go and sit
Uh,
in the next circle. Yeah.
I mean, it's tricky. Like, someone asked me on the last podcast, what parting words do you have? What advice do you have? Um, you don't give advice in MKP. um, but what I know has worked for me, I think that's also the thing with human beings, right? it's not like this 12-step stuff for everyone. There's different other ways of being sober, getting sober. I believe through like, church or whatever. But I know what works for me, and I know what has worked for me. So yeah, I think being in circle is important. Um, Around mission, because for me also, like, I think the first time I found out about mission was MKP. Yeah, what mission was, living a mission, and how are you living a mission? So um, I'd say go do an MKP weekend, an NWTA, New Warrior Adventure Training, MKP weekend. Yeah, because what helps with that is when I'm not in mission, um, that I can be held accountable.
Mm.
You know, because in those spaces I sit with men that love me, that care for me, and that love me to tell me the truth. Right? Um, yeah.
Mm. Mm. Thank you. Yeah, I think I do like what you say about accountability, you know, having that direction, and then someone saying, when are you off that compass direction? You're going this way or that way. So yeah, I'm really sensing that about accountability. So we've been talking probably coming up for an hour now. I think, some of the other questions I had was, I think you mentioned in one of your podcasts, a 10-day silent retreat. Do you want to share a bit about that, how you found that experience?
I think you're asking me this to piss me off. No, but um, in short, it was really, really uncomfortable. I went, I did a Vipassana 10-day silent retreat, which was hard.
Was it?
You know, I didn't have my vices, I didn't have phone, I didn't have cigarettes, I didn't have distraction. So what Vipassana gave me was the time to look at myself and to go within myself. And when I look at it today, it's a gift, complete gift of how challenging that was, being in that space, being with me, right? Because like I said, with the drugs helped me get away from me, right? And with the silent retreat, it gave me like so much to look at me naked. Yeah, and also like, because it made me look at all the my comforts and the stuff that I've become dependent on. For instance, whether it be social media, whether it be whatever, because I suffer from an addictive personality. So that plays out in other areas. It's like, okay, I've stopped the drugs, but then there's still the addictive behaviors, right? And what was special about this 10-day silent retreat was really being uncomfortable. I mean, I came out of that retreat crying, weeping, that we but like a proper, like a deep cleanse cry from my gut, like storm. And it gave me a chance to just release that pain. Um, and again, it speaks to, if I had advice for men, what would I tell men? Because I get scared. Like, for me, it's like the question is, where does all the stuff go? So if I'm not releasing the anger, where does it go? Where if I don't release the tears, where does it go? And it just piles up and piles up. At the moment, I'm trying to, I'm tapping into. I want to do a documentary on Black and brown trauma. Because the big question for me is, where does that trauma go? So if people don't have resources and access to these two psychiatrists, to MKP, because MKP is middle class as well. So it's all these. So where does all this pain go? Where does the trauma go? Where does the hurt go? Right? It becomes undiagnosed and then plays out in other areas of our lives, right? And yeah, that 10-day retreat gave me the ability to be uncomfortable, because I know when I'm uncomfortable, that's the time I grow, right? It's like when I'm on MKP weekends, I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable at all. I'm uncomfortable, and as a leader, I'm uncomfortable because, it's out of my comfort zone. I've got to lead, and that's uncomfortable, and obviously the work stretches me. It stretches me. It stretches me. It stretches me. So, and I guess I mean, we've got the highest suicide rate in this country. So, also, what then happens to all this trauma? And that's why the holding space was started. It's to hold men, to hold space for men. It's hold space for men. And part of the work is, I don't give men advice. I tell you what to do. Just listen. Because sometimes there is that like rescuing. You want to rescue and fix. So even when another man cries, it's like, we want to run for the tissues and, pat him on the back. And it's like, no, just leave him alone. Let him feel what he needs to feel. Don't rob him of that opportunity by giving him a tissue. Wanting to give him a hug because you're uncomfortable. Now you're trying to take away the pain, his pain. Sit with your uncomfortability and see him crying, witness him, and that's what we do, and I've seen it. So, I mean, I've said in circles for years. Immediately when someone wants to go around and get the tissues, I'm like, no, sit down. Let's just shut up and hear this man cry. That's it. And let's be uncomfortable in that space. Because we're here to be uncomfortable and we're here to do our work. So, yeah. Good question.
Thank you, Mervin. So I guess then, what's your sense of what does happen to the trauma in Black and brown men?
Well, my sense is it leaks into alcoholism, it leaks into gender-based violence, it leads into womanizing, it leads into the other part of it where it goes into like, it hides behind religion, it hides behind all these other things. It hides behind fashion.
Yeah.
It hides.
Yeah. Have you seen the film The Wisdom of Trauma with Gabor Mate?
No.
It is fascinating. There's a
I love him. He's amazing.
Yeah, whether you can find it online somewhere, I think you can possibly kind of watch it on the Wisdom of Trauma website. But essentially, there's a scene where they're in a prison and they're going through the ACEs, and there's a mixture of men there, and they ask the men these questions. The ACEs are the adverse childhood experiences, and they say, was one of your parents an alcoholic? Please take a step forward. And they find that the men who are there, a lot of them have had childhood adverse experiences. And so it's like, trying to link this in, that trauma is quite common with people who are struggling with addictions or with being in prison. So he talks about this, and it is really fascinating. It's a great film. Really, yeah, to really like Gabor Mate.
Grateful.
So that sounds like a great idea, the film. Where are you at the moment with it, Mervin?
I'm just kind of creating content and
Mm.
writing a treatment for that, and wanting to build on that. But I kind of got an idea of every aspect of what I want to deal with. I want to deal with the drunk uncle in the family. Well, in my family, I've got a drunk uncle. Um, and there's also like his voice not being heard at family meetings because he's the drunk uncle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But also, why is he the drunk uncle? What's underneath that?
Mm. Yeah.
And there's all these like aspects, also, like I mentioned, like fashion. Fashion can be a way of escapism and hiding behind that as a mask. Um, yeah, it's just so layered, but it also kind of boils down to like just me being passionate about this stuff
Mm.
and it being having a voice because um, it needs to have a voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, bless you for putting this work out there, and I really hear your passion with that. So thank you, Mervin. So yeah, we're just coming to the end. Is there any last words? I won't say, but any last words you want to say?
Well, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for inviting me to the space. Um, yeah, keep on doing what you're doing. You living your mission and you're showing up and creating spaces for men like me to be. I appreciate it. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I couldn't do the Mankind Project without leaders like you stepping forward and leading the weekends. You came all the way from South Africa to do the weekend I was on. So bless you. Thank you so much, Mervin. And yeah, I put Mervin's contact details, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, in the bottom. And if you're in South Africa and you want to find out more about the Holding Space projects, please do reach out to Mervin. So yeah, lovely to speak to you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.